Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would talk about an SPH that is in the Chinese tech tree, the PLZ05. I ended up playing this thing recently, and to be honest, I had a pretty good time with it. The vehicle itself is a little bit different compared to a bunch of the other SPHs, because it has a lot of similar factors, but there are some quirky things to it, which means the playstyle is slightly different. Now, it still has the same issues as all of the other SPHs. Its targeting speed isn't fantastic, it doesn't have a ton of armor, and also at the same time it can get caught out in a lot of positions because it's absolutely massive mate. So when it comes to the PLZ05, yeah, it's still got all the same problems. So let's talk about the other parts though, which make it a little bit more unique and generally quite enjoyable from at least a gameplay point of view. So first of all, it's at 7.7, which is a BR which is pretty good for China. You know, it's not the best, but it's definitely not the worst. You have the M48 as backup, which is really nice. And then you also have the ZTS63, which might be the most annoying vehicle to play in the world as a second spawn. So just don't play that. Bring along something else and have a bit of fun. And also you have some pretty good cars. So you have the H5, you have the F84G. Both of those are fantastic additions. So if you can do pretty well in the PLZ, you can rule the game from the air, which is quite nice. Now, the vehicle itself, what makes it different compared to a lot of the other vehicles that are in the standard tech tree is, or sorry, not the Chinese tech tree, but SPHs overall, right? So in other tech trees, is it has a Spall Liner, which may seem a little bit odd because it's an SPH, right? Why does it need this extra protection? And that's a great question. Now, the Spall Liner doesn't always work because there is a gap in it. So if you actually face the PLZ05, the area to shoot it, if you want to one-shot it, is above the gun. There is only about 40 millimeters worth of armor where the optic is, and if you can penetrate through that, then you just nuke the vehicle. So you don't have to shoot the cheeks of it. A lot of the time when I played this thing, people would just shoot me in the middle and I would die. So they would shoot around the gun, and that's where, you know, troubles would start. But the Spall Liner itself actually does obviously reduce a lot of the spall, which means that this vehicle has a lot more opportunity to survive a shot compared to a lot of the other SPHs. So you can take a few more chances compared to other SPHs, which I actually think is really interesting and does give you something different in order to play the vehicle. A lot of the time with these SPHs, it really is you have to make sure that the enemy is not really focusing on you to be able to go after them. And there was times with the PLZ05 where I was able to trade pretty efficiently because of the Spall Liner and also because of some other factors too. Now, the mobility of this thing is not bad. It's not as good as some of the other ones like the Panzer Howitzer, but the transmission's pretty nice, meaning you can reverse quite well. And also it has the 7.5 second reload, which I think in general is quite nice. It does have the autoloader modeled, and it does have all the updated X-ray stuff. So when you get shot, even though you'll probably survive the shot, you also won't be able to fire back because you'll have to repair a bunch of things. So crew skills are super important on this type of vehicle. And also, it's a very tall vehicle. Not a lot of gun depression, only 3 degrees, so there'll be a lot of places where you'll be able to get shot, but also not be able to shoot the enemy because of this really bad kind of degree on it. So you've got to be very careful of that. What it also has, though, which is kind of nice, is the 12.7 millimeter. This is good against light vehicles and also against planes, and since you are a massive target, you will be a target for cast. That's just kind of how these types of vehicles go. But when it comes to PLZ05, it obviously has access to the Type 05 HEVT. Now, this is a rank 3 modification. It is the round that you should use. I know it might sound really interesting to use the BEA1-155, the SAPC-BC shell. Don't, just leave it be. Just use the HE to start with, the Type 05. It has more explosive mass, and also you'll overpressure stuff way more, which is basically what this vehicle is. It's just an overpressure machine. And then when you get to HEVT in rank 3, unlock that and use that instead, because Gadget made a really cool change when they added the Panzer Howitzer and a few others. Basically, you now have a opportunity to change the fuse on the proximity shell. So you can either change it to impact or you can change it to radio. So this means that you don't have to change the shell in order to go after aircraft, to change it into a proximity shell. This is a huge positive change because it means that you don't have to wait 7.5 seconds in order to engage planes. It happens instantaneously. It's just literally a control where you click and then it changes the fuse head. This thing also has a laser rangefinder, which is fantastic against stuff like helicopters and also longer targets, meaning that you can hammer stuff from miles away. And you have smoke grenades. So if you do get hit, you can you can smoke and reposition, which is not always the case with these vehicles which are designed to not be on the front line. Now, one of the problems I will say with this thing, and also just this lineup in general, is the fact that it just doesn't suit the meta right now. The meta around 7.7, there is a lot of 8.3, there is a lot of 8.7, and they're very, very strong. If you get down beyond into 6.7.7.0, there's a lot of heavy tanks, so you have to use your laser rangefinder to be able to donk cupolas and go after stuff like that, which is fine to do. You can do that. And then also the other part of it is every single map you play is basically a tiny map. So the PLZ05 is designed for long-range engagements. That's where it's the best at. Combining the HEVT with the laser rangefinder, that's where you'll find yourself a fantastic place. But the problem is, you don't get that in the game. It doesn't really exist. When I've actually got that in games with the PLZ05, we've done incredibly well with it. 4 kills, 5 kills, 6 kills, 7 kills, and been able to donk people from miles away. But usually nowadays, with how close quartered a lot of these maps are for War Thunder, the PLZ05 can't really shine because this BR is more heavy, more medium focused, so it's much more brawly instead of, shoot at long distances. So that kind of sucks. And then also the backup, the M48A1, it's a good vehicle, it puts out damage. The 90mm heat can be a bit annoying, but generally it's fine. But it has a massive cupola on it, and everybody and their mother knows just to spam the cupola and you die. It's one of the most annoying experiences because around this BR you start getting those wonderful 35mm AAs, stuff like the Gepard and also other vehicles like the Marksman and the Itzva, and what ends up happening is they just spam your cupola and you die. And it's just stupid and dumb and just makes the vehicle completely worthless in most situations. But the PLZ05 doesn't have that issue because it gets penned by everything, so you don't have to worry about it. So I would say that I had a good time in this vehicle because it has a few features that make it more interesting compared to a lot of the SPHs. The targeting speed is still not great, but you can work around it because the chassis itself is quite fast. It's quite good at turning, which is quite nice. But the major issue was the map selection. A lot of the maps that I was playing in this thing just didn't suit the vehicle, and that didn't help at all. Now, we played 31 battles in this thing, and also a 58% win rate, so pretty high win rate, 64 ground kills, 24 deaths, so just less than a 3-to-1 in the form of the ground, but we also got 13 air kills, which shows that how the HEVT can be multi-purpose and also super useful, and that to me is just a great string to the bow. If this thing had a little bit better targeting speed, maybe if it had a few other factors just to help it out, it would be a fantastic vehicle. But also, it would be called the Panzerhaubitze 2000, if that was the case too. Another thing is, I saw a bunch of people think this thing has thermals. They actually mentioned it when we were playing it and streaming and grinding it out. It doesn't have thermals, so I don't know where that idea came from. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on the vehicle, if you would play it or enjoy it. Look after yourselves. Peace be with you. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.